about the death of right-wing activist Chrlie Kirk. We're going to piece together the events of what's being called a fatal shooting on a university campus. So let's just dive right into what we know so far.
I mean, the core event here is just as stark as it is tragic. While he was addressing students in Utah, Chrlie Kirk, who, is a huge political figure, was shot. There's video from the scene that shows him speaking one moment and then just suddenly slumping down in his seat.
And to really get a sense of the horror of that moment, you have to hear from the people who were actually there. One witness described the scene with this, it's just a visceral and really disturbing account. It captures the sheer shock and disbelief on that campus. Okay, so to really grasp the full weight of what's happened, we've got to understand who Chrlie Kirk was, right? What role did he actually play in American politics? And the first thing you need to know is his age. He was just 31 years old. Think about that. A young but incredibly influential voice in politics. So who was he? Well, he was a major conservative activist, probably best known as the founder of Turning Point USA. He was also a really close ally of Donald Trump, and he was widely credited with, as they say, supercharging the MAGA movement. His whole thing was really bringing a new generation, a younger generation of Americans into the party. And you can really see his influence in this tribute from former President Trump, who actually broke the news of his death on social media. This just shows you how high Kirk stood within that movement. Trump's words really underscored not just their close relationship, but Kirk's role as the voice for young conservatives. All right, now let's try to reconstruct his final moments, based on the accounts from people who were right there and saw it all unfold. This all started out as a pretty typical campus Q&A session. A student gets up, asks a question about gun crime, Kirk gives an answer, then the student offers a rebuttal, and Kirk reaches for the mic to respond a second time. And it was right at that moment a single shot was fired. His last sentence was never finished. And what makes this even more of a personal tragedy, beyond just the public assassination, is this detail that was reported soon after. His wife and children were apparently right there, at the university when the shooting happened. So, in the immediate aftermath, as the entire nation is trying to process this news, the reactions were, they were complicated. It really highlighted both the widespread sympathy for him and the deep political divisions he was always a part of. The reaction really showed two completely different sides of the coin. On one hand, reports mentioned universal sympathy for him, and tributes were coming from across the political divide. But on the other hand, you can't separate his death from the context of his work, right? So you have conservatives who loved his approach of sparking debate on campus, while at the same time, he was often, as you know, attacked by liberals for his views. Look, an event like this, it just immediately rips open these much larger and much more difficult national conversations. We're talking about political violence and, of course, gun control in America. So, right away, three huge concerns have come to the forefront. First, this is being framed as just the latest chapter in a really troubling trend of political violence. Second, this is going to reignite the fierce debate over gun control. And third, and this is maybe the most urgent part, the person who did this is still at large. And to really understand those concerns, you need two key pieces of context. First, on the issue of political violence, remember, Donald Trump himself was the target of 2 assassination attempts just last year. And then, on the gun laws front, this all happened in Utah, a state where you can legally carry a loaded weapon without even needing a permit. So all of this leaves us grappling with a really difficult and, honestly, a deeply unsettling question. When you mix this increasingly volatile political rhetoric with very permissive gun laws, are tragic events like this one just inevitable? It's a question the whole nation